welcome to the Select Star Podcast, your resource for innovative technology, developer topics, and more. Here's your host, Margot McCabe from the HarperDB team.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Select Star Tech Podcast hosted by HarperDB. Thanks for tuning in. We've got another really awesome guest today that I'm excited about, that I've been wanting to have on the podcast for a little bit. So I'm glad we were able to make it work. So, and if I pronounced the name incorrectly, you can correct me, but we have Edidiong. Is that correct?
Yeah, you actually pronounced it really well.
Perfect. Well, yes, thank you for joining today. I believe you're based in Nigeria. I have your Twitter pulled up. That was kind of how I found you. I've been following you on Twitter for a little bit. I know you're a software developer and content creator and also a developer advocate for Hashnode, which is exciting because we happen to be sponsoring a hackathon with Hashnode this month. So
yeah,
a lot of stars aligned. I thought it was a good time to chat. So thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me as well.
Great. So yeah, maybe to get started, it would be great to hear just a little bit about you, your journey into tech, how, what you're working on now, how you got here. Just would love to learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Like you rightly said, my name is Edidiong Asikpo. I'm currently based in Lagos, Nigeria. I feel like my journey into tech is, just like most people, even though I studied computer science, I wouldn't necessarily attach being in tech to that. I'm going to tell you why. So growing up, I feel like everybody has different aspirations in life while they're like kids, and when they become teenagers, and when they become adults eventually. So I moved from wanting to be a lawyer while I was a child because I feel like I was very argumentative, right? So you won't just say something and I'll absolutely agree with you. I always want to know why you believe in that particular thing or understand exactly what you're trying to say, right? So I wasn't that child who accepted just anything. So right. I think because of that, my parents just kind of thought that, my parents thought that I would become a lawyer. So, my dad was already calling me a lawyer and stuff. So that's pretty much what I had in mind. But when I became like a teenager in like high school, I wanted to study petrochemical engineering. So I pretty much moved from like the law side of things moved from art to science, right? And then, my father wasn't really in tune with that. He preferred that I should go for medicine and surgery, which wasn't really something that I liked doing because I don't think I'm super comfortable with like drugs or injections or anything that has to do with like the human body, to be honest. I think it's absolutely scary. But since since he was the one who was paying my fees, I had no choice, sort of. I feel like the ecosystem in Nigeria and Africa in general is a lot different from like other places where parents are not necessarily super strict with like their children and stuff, right? So I decided to go for medicine and surgery, wrote the exams and passed as well. But then the school I was supposed to go to was like very far from where I used to stay. Again, my dad wasn't comfortable with that. So that's when I switched to computer science. That's when I started studying computer science. And while I was in high school, just to step back a bit, computer science was something that was easy for me. I think the teacher did a very good job at explaining it. But when I went to college, it wasn't as easy as it used to be. So I don't know if it's because of the lecturers, right, who maybe were not teaching it in the right way, or I just wasn't understanding it, but there was something happening there. So the change for me was when I went for an internship at a company called Start Innovation Hub while I was in my third year. And in the process of doing that, I got exposed to other young people like me who were doing really fascinating things, who were building communities, building applications, building websites. And I was just amazed that if you actually study, you actually learn how to code, that you could actually build up like interesting things, or maybe build up like the tiniest features on Facebook or something. Because at the time I really loved Facebook. So when I got into Android development, the fact that I could build like an app that I could click on it and then it showed the Facebook logo was exciting to me. Like, I was so happy, to be honest. And I knew that if I kept on that path, then it meant that at some point I was able to build like better Android applications. So when I went back to school, a lot of things made more sense to me. Things that I didn't understand previously were like a lot clearer because I actually understood what coding meant. I had like a lot more practical knowledge about it than I did before I went for that internship. So I would say the reason why I'm in tech today is specifically because of that internship. I don't necessarily because I studied computer science, because I don't think I would have still followed the same path if I didn't go for that internship. Yeah, so pretty much after that internship, I got involved in like contributing to open source projects, also building communities as well. Then joined a company as a developer advocate, where I was like helping to build a stronger community for that company, right? That eventually transitioned into Hashnode. And I think the Hashnode gig was basically because I was already publishing content, right? So the CEO of Hashnode reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd actually love to have you on board." And he just liked some of the stuff that I was doing already. And at that moment, I was already like a Hashnode fangirl. Like, I absolutely loved Hashnode and everything it stood for. So I was like, yeah, this would definitely be fantastic. I'd love to come on board as a developer advocate. And then I switched and joined Hashnode. So yeah, that's pretty much a short version of how I got into tech and how I got here.
Wow, that's awesome. It's cool to hear your story. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that one internship. You know, you got lucky and had a great experience at that one internship.
Yeah.
That motivated you to continue in tech, because I think more often than not, you know, people unfortunately, you know, they'll study something in college, they'll major in something, and they'll think they don't like it, or maybe they'll have a bad experience at their first internship or job and they'll change paths.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about how that one experience can actually affect your path so much. You know, you had, I guess, the right introduction into tech and kind of what you wanted to do and stayed that path. But I don't think everyone gets so lucky. So it seems like perfect that, you know, that happened and that you didn't go the route of being a lawyer or doctor, which would be awesome as well. But very different.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think of it like, what would life been like if I went into like being a doctor, becoming a lawyer? It's hard to imagine, because I don't know. I feel like tech. There's something about tech. There's like, I mean, being a doctor or a lawyer is great, like you said. But then with tech, there are like a lot more opportunities. There's like room to work remotely. There's room to meet interesting people when you're a developer advocate. There's like a lot of interesting benefits that you may not necessarily get as a lawyer or a person in the medical field. But anyway, so it doesn't change that those professions are still amazing as well.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. That's a good way to put it. There's so many amazing positions and necessary jobs out there, but it just is about finding the one that's the right fit. And I think, you know, a lot of people pivot and change multiple times throughout their career, which is okay, but it probably feels good to like know you're in the right spot.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, very cool. So now you're doing developer advocacy for Hashnode. I've seen a lot of the content that you post online. I know you and a couple other of the advocates have done a really great job of building community around Hashnode. I used to only know about dev.to and maybe a couple others. And then when I discovered Hashnode, it seems like it grew really quickly. Like it was, you know, everyone was talking about it. There were all these articles on why should you post on Hashnode and nowhere else. And it's really cool to see the momentum, because I feel that it's happened really quickly over the last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It sure did. So I would say Hashtag started out as a Q&A platform, right? And then when Medium introduced like the paywall, the founders created something called DevBlog, which we eventually changed to Hashnode. So DevBlog was like, give developers the opportunity to not just write an article for a platform, not just go to write on like dev.to or Medium, where the traffic goes to the domain of that company, but then gives you an opportunity to actually own a blog that sends traffic directly to your own domain. So if you ever decide to leave and create your own blog from scratch. You still like stay and benefit all of those things that all of those SEO benefits, all of those interactions that you got on that domain, regardless of staying on Hashnode or not. And I think another interesting thing is when people build their blogs from scratch, right, and don't necessarily have an audience online, it's hard for people to read or discover their articles. But with Hashnode, we're giving you that opportunity to still map your domain and also have like a community, right, that is ready and willing to read your article if they find it useful. So I think the combination of those two things made it really fascinating for developers, right? I mean, we had to like come up with different good strategies to pass the message and ensure that we've got like a lot of creators on the platform and stuff. But I think more specifically, it's like the value that we provide to the developer community that gave us, made us grow as fast as we did.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think I believe from what I know of that Hashnode is one of the first communities to structure it in this way, because as you said, almost all of the other blogging platforms have everything going to their own site and their own domain. And so I'm assuming that's why Hashnode has grown so quickly and done so well, is because maybe it's the first of its kind that's doing this, providing developers and writers the opportunity to have their own domain. And maybe other sites will start to catch on and start to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's pretty much like, how Clubhouse came out, right? And then when companies realized that Clubhouse was doing well, every single company is now recruiting like audio clones. And I'm like, okay, can you all just calm down?
Right. Exactly. There's always a leader of the pack, and then sometimes the copycats. But
yeah,
I guess they say copying can be a form of flattery. So I think it's really cool. And it seems like the whole community is so positive. And I know for this hackathon that we're doing this month, it's been so great to work with everyone, and just so flexible and easy. And like any questions we had, it was just kind of, yeah, that's totally fine. No worries. Like it's been really awesome to work with you guys. And so I think doing partnerships like that, doing the hackathon partnerships and other sponsorships and any partnerships you do with companies is such a great way to like get the word out there and get more people on the blog, but also just kind of like promote, further education and resources in the community. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, just to mention though, I definitely feel like you're doing an absolutely fantastic job with HappyDB as well. So I think I discovered HappyDB like a few months ago, and it's definitely from you. But then I've seen a lot of people talk about it in like, I mean, it's kind of like 2-3 months. Almost everybody's talking about it. I'm like, okay. I mean, I think I looked at your profile at some point. I'm like, okay, you're definitely doing a really great job at like capturing so many people at the same time. And I mean, like partnering with companies, finding interesting ways to ensure that developers across the world hear about HappyDB. That's really, really amazing. You're doing great.
Oh, well, thank you. Coming from a professional developer advocate like you, I definitely appreciate that. We're trying to do sort of similar, developer relations, community building, where we spread the word and just get people curious about it to try it out. But, balancing not being too salesy and not being too like advertising in your face, here, try this product. I think it's so much more genuine to have people really try it out. And I'm always encouraging people to share their honest opinion. Like if there's something you don't like, we have a feedback board. Our developer team would love to hear it. You don't have to just say positive things. Like that's what building a community is about, is being able to offer suggestions and things. So I think it's a fun time to be in developer relations and developer advocacy, because it's the companies that aren't doing it yet are realizing that they better start doing it, because it's becoming more and more
exactly. Yeah, it is. I mean, just to speak on, there's something you said about trying not to make it salesy or marketing or stuff like that. I think that's something that is very, very important and vital for a person in the developer advocate space to know, because over the years I've discovered that developers don't really like marketing. They don't like when you're like hey, come and use this, come and use that. They like it when another developer tells them, hey, I tried this product and I think it's great, or here are some of the benefits of this product. So finding interesting ways to like pass that message to developers without necessarily coming off as salesy or marketing is absolutely very important. Like it's one of the one of the vital things you need to do, because once they begin to perceive it as just marketing, it would slowly like remove developers from like the product or the community. But once it feels like something that's actually genuine, right? Like doing things that are impacting the developers or would help them become better at a particular thing when they use a company's product, is like a good approach to doing developer advocacy. And I think your team is doing a really great job at that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. I think what you're saying is so spot on, and it's definitely a delicate and sometimes I think difficult dance to learn how to do. I think it takes some time to learn the best way to kind of communicate and get the point across and connect with these different developers and build those relationships. Like it takes time, but once you start to feel that traction, it's so exciting. Like it's definitely one of those situations where the hard work pays off, which I'm sure you feel the same way with
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys on the Hashnode team have, any exciting like feature updates or any other exciting events coming up or anything you're kind of allowed to talk about? I'm always curious, but I know sometimes you can't really talk about things quite yet.
Yeah, so we have like a lot of interesting features coming up. I mean, one of the things we launched recently was hashtag sponsors, which is like another interesting way for developers to make money through blogging. I mean, Hashnode already supports web monetization, but we just thought that, okay, hey, how else can we ensure that people who create content can make money as well through blogging, right? And then Hashtag Sponsors gives is more like a community funding initiative, sort of, right? So if you come to my blog and like my article, you could just like decide to sponsor that article or sponsor any of my blog posts in general. So that's like an interesting thing that I'll definitely want people to check out if you've not done that already. And the next big step for us is trying to create like more team specific features for organizations. So right now we have like a lot of individual developers at Hashnode, but one of the things we'd love to do in future is to bring a lot more businesses and tech community into Hashnode as well. So instead of an individual blogging space, it could be like a team blog, a team publication sort of, where tons of people can publish under for instance, HapaDB's blog, right? I mean, it's already available in beta for a couple of people, but we're looking at expanding that a lot more to more people and like more companies and community in the ecosystem. Yeah, I think those are like the two major things. So there are definitely a lot of other fixes here and there, and like creating better experiences, like improving our feed to make it a lot more interesting for not just writers but for readers as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I've seen some posts about the new sponsorship features, and that sounds, I mean, that's such a great way to, I guess, engage and connect and support fellow developers and folks in the tech community, where you can say, hey, like, I really learned a lot from this. I really support this. I want this person to keep creating content. So I'm going to sponsor this. And can you choose like how much? Are there different levels of sponsorship? Like you can choose any amount to sponsor, or is that pretty flexible?
Yeah, you can choose. Yeah, you can choose any amount to sponsor. It's actually flexible.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's really great. I think that's and it's probably awesome for the people doing the sponsorship to know that that's going straight to the writer and the content creator, and not just going to the platform, which probably happens with a lot of other blogging platforms, as you said, that are like behind paywalls. So that's really interesting, and I love the other idea of having allowing more collaboration and allowing people to, as you I think said, kind of co-write and join together on projects and tutorials and things. I think that'll just further like the networking aspect of blogging platforms, where you can maybe build a project with someone across the world and collaborate by putting that together. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. So about the hackathon, what are some of the things your team is looking at? Like, what kind of projects are you like? I mean, I know a couple of people have recently publishing articles around their projects. Have you seen anyone that you're excited about yet?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even before we launched this hackathon, we've as you said, as we've been building a lot of momentum over the last couple of months, we've seen some really cool tutorials and projects coming out in general of people building different apps with HarperDB. Just people asking like a lot more questions on our community Slack channel, just like a lot more I think collaboration and things that are happening around it. And so this hackathon came at a perfect time because Hashnode helps us spread the word to their users, and they can just use the free tier of HarperDB. It's really like low commitment. There's not much to lose, but yeah, we've seen some really awesome projects, especially with some newer or maybe less popular frameworks and languages. Because previously we've had like
That's interesting.
yeah, previously we've had lots of people building things with maybe Node.js and React and some other, really great ones, but it's been cool to see some new ones come out. Like recently we had someone write one with Gatsby, a couple others, I think there was someone that submitted one in the hackathon that was building like a library management system with EJS and Node.js. So I think it's cool just seeing people like build with all these different frameworks, languages, and tools, and just put their own spin on it. That's kind of what we're most excited to see, because every developer has their own preferred method and tools they want to work with. So it's great for us to not have to like put those regulations in place and say, hey, this, you have to do it this way. It's like very open-ended, which is fun.
Yeah, that's absolutely like a very valid point. I think that would make a lot more people contribute, right? Because the thing with creating certain teams for hackathons, I mean, it can be great, right? It could help you achieve specific things, but then it also limits the creativity of the developer because they have to think within a certain team. Like whatever idea they're coming up with has to like fit into the team. So I like that HarperDB was open to making it open to all and not restricting it to like certain teams for the hackathon.
Yeah, exactly. We want to just, I mean, we've seen over the past 6 months or so, we've seen developers globally, signing up for HarperDB, using it, joining our community. Actually, surprisingly, we had noticed back in around February, March, we noticed we were getting a lot of signups from Nigeria and other surrounding areas, which is so cool to see. That's just, somewhere
that's cool.
so far across the world. And I'm assuming that developer communities are growing everywhere. And it just is cool to like feel connected with these people.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, be able to just chat and have that community. And I think a lot of people might mistakenly assume that most developers are in North America or Europe or something, but they're everywhere. And there's countries where they're way smarter than we are. So it's just been really cool to see.
Exactly. They're everywhere. Yeah. And there are like a lot more communities that are growing and becoming better in terms of like tech and all. So it's really interesting to see.
Yeah. Do you is there a strong sense of tech or developer community near where you live or where you're from? Or do you feel that most of the community building you do is like online and virtual with people all over, or is it kind of a mix right now, or what's that look like?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, when I started out, like when I went for that internship that I talked about sometime in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, it was more of the like local meetups, right? So I was only open to people who lived in the same place that I lived in, right? People from Akwa Ibom in Nigeria, which is a state in Nigeria. But over time, I got to discover that, oh, hey, it's not just about my local community, right? Not just about people that I can easily see. There are like a lot more people out there, a lot more people that you can interact with thanks to interesting things like social media, right? So you could like become friends with tons of people across the world. So I'd say the developer community in Africa is growing really, really well and super fast. more specifically in Nigeria, right? I mean, there are like other countries like Nairobi, Rwanda that is also doing great in like the tech community and ecosystem. But I think for Nigeria, I mean, if you want to look at like all of the different countries in Africa, which of them is, I mean, bringing out like really interesting. I'm not just saying this because I'm from Nigeria. Actually, I think it's the truth. There are a lot more software engineers in Nigeria, and I think Nigerians have there are people that are really focused, right? We love to achieve certain things. So there are people who put our minds to do really great and awesome things, and we've discovered that being in the tech space is something that comes with a lot of opportunities. Because to be honest, the country is not like one of the best places to be. We don't have, I mean, our leaders, the people in the government are, we have mostly corrupt leaders, right? So the country isn't going as great as it should be. So just seeing young people doing amazing things in tech and like pushing Nigeria to be an awesome country is something that's really fascinating to see. And I believe that over time we're going to continue seeing more interesting people, more interesting software engineers, developer advocates, and the rest coming out from like countries like Nigeria and other African countries in general.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm sure it's I'm sure it kind of catches on and spreads quickly, that once, if someone sees their brother or their friend or someone and how much they're succeeding after they learned how to code or just getting into tech in general, I'm sure it's kind of spreads that way, where if a bunch of people started doing it in Nigeria first, maybe that's why it seems like one of the countries that's doing it the most. But I definitely agree with you. As I said, we've seen lots of signups for HarperDB and just other people like joining our community saying, hey, from Nigeria. And it's so cool. And it's definitely inspiring, and just makes you feel like in this virtual day and age, and especially with everything that's happened with the pandemic and everything, it's cool to feel so connected with someone that's so far away. And so
exactly. I think the pandemic definitely opened us a lot more to the possibilities of doing things online. I mean, before the pandemic, we did stuff online, but we also had to do things in person. So the pandemic made us see that we were just basically scratching the surface of things that we could do online, and then it opened us to like more interesting things, like better ways of like hosting events, better ways of communicating or connecting with different people. So I definitely agree that, I mean, even though the pandemic has been terrible, it's like lots of lives have been lost, but I think that it also kind of had good parts. I mean, it made the world realize that, first of all, anything can happen at any point. Like, I literally didn't believe that we could be at a place where nobody could go outside of their houses for like weeks and months, right? But then we're now exposed to the possibility of that. So maybe it means that we'll probably take global warming a lot more seriously, or understand that we need to take care of the world better. And then they also gave an opportunity to still be able to connect with people, even though we didn't meet them physically. And another interesting thing is, so many companies thought that it wasn't possible for them to work remotely. They were absolutely against remote work. But again, the pandemic has also showed them that, hey, you can actually do this. And right now, a lot more developers don't want to go back to like the office. They prefer to work from home. So I believe this would make a lot of companies begin to like shift their mindset of thinking that you can't work remotely and still do good work. And then it would mean that people would have more time to spend with their family, have more time for themselves and their mental health as well.
Yeah, I love the points you make there, and just kind of focusing on the positives that can come from something that has been so negative and so scary for so many reasons. But you bring up some really cool points, and it's funny when you said like this now makes people realize that anything is possible, because it's so true that when this first started happening over a year ago, everyone said, oh, this will be maybe a week or a couple weeks, and then kept saying, oh, maybe a month, maybe 2 months.
Exactly.
And no one thought that it would ever turn into what it did. And so, you make such an interesting point of like, I think now people are realizing, life is unpredictable. We don't really know, we can't say what's going to happen. And as you said, we shouldn't like turn down other things that are happening, such as global warming. And, if a global pandemic can happen, what else can happen? But, I also agree on just like the working remote world that we have now. Like our team, we've been remote ever since COVID first hit, and our developer team especially became way more productive when right when we went remote. And I think my boss
that's nice
numbers. I know. And it's probably because you said like there's no commuting. People have more time. Yeah. They can kind of work on their own hours. Like if they want to work a little in the morning and a little at night, that's totally fine. And it's definitely showing that like where there's a will, there's a way. You can figure it out. There's a way to do it. Like we're staying remote for now. It works best for us. And I know some companies are going back like halftime or whatever they're doing, but it's just, it's been cool to see how everyone has like adapted and worked together to make it through.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really good to see. I mean, I think even if companies do have time, that's a lot better than completely forcing people to come back to the office, because I mean, it's been almost a year or more than a year of working from home. So it's definitely going to seem like a big shift to like go back to work immediately.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I think I've heard a lot of people say like it's so nice working from home, but it would be great to have a mix of maybe a couple days in the office, a couple days at home, like having that flexibility. So I'm curious to see like where the trend will go over the next 5 years or so. But yeah, it's interesting. It's just so cool to be able to connect, with people in your position, and hear the really interesting insight. And just like every time I have these conversations for the podcast, I always feel like really positive and excited afterwards, because I get to connect with like really cool, just energetic, like people that look at the world in such a positive way. And so that's why I love having conversations. But yeah, so one thing I like to ask, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but one thing I always like to ask guests is, two things. One is if you have any tips, like if you had to think of your top 3 favorite tips or something for either people listening that are trying to get into coding and just get into development, or people that are maybe trying to get into a position similar to where you are with developer advocacy, like just if you had to summarize, some of your favorite tips and suggestions that have helped you along the way. I think people are always, everyone that you talk to and hear from at least has like some little snippet or some takeaway that I think people will remember, and that's helpful. So I always like to ask that.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome. I do have, I would say 2 tips. So the first tip that I have is, so let me just give like a quick story before I say that. So I there was a point in my life where I struggled with understanding how to communicate through writing, right? So most of the time I could have like ideas that I wanted to share, but because I didn't believe that I was going to say it in the right way, I would decide not to go ahead with like sharing that idea. And what that did to me over time was it made me lose certain opportunities that I would have had access to, right? If I felt I was comfortable enough to like express myself in words. So at a certain point in my life, I decided to be intentional about growing as a writer, because even though you're a software developer, the ability to express yourself perfectly in words, or I mean, not necessarily perfectly, but to a certain level is very important. And I just knew that I needed to like improve, because I also wanted to delve into technical writing a lot more. And one of the first things that I did was try to cut down on the way I used short forms while texting, right? I feel like it's something a lot of people underestimate. So instead of saying, like literally typing out how are you, I'll use like short forms like how, like HW, and then instead of spelling out R, that's ARE, I would just type the letter R. And subconsciously, that was making me forget like real English words that I would have used, because I was just like using short forms. And when I was writing, like, let's say an email, right, I could use like short forms instead of like the actual word, because this was something I was used to doing. So I had to cut down on that. And then I decided to like read a lot more. And in the process of reading, I came across this quote, which is what I'm going to share, which said, you only learn how to do something by doing that thing, right? So in my case, I wanted to learn how to write. And it said the only way I could learn how to write is by actually writing. So my first tip today would be that whatever you want to do, the only way to do that thing is if you actually start doing that thing. You might say, hey, I want to start coding. I think coding would be great. I want to become like a designer. And most of the time we just keep ourselves from like just thinking about those things, but not necessarily doing those things, right? So once we, as every single time we don't do those things, it means we're taking ourselves a bit further from achieving that dream or crushing that goal. So if you ever want to do anything, which is could be like maybe getting started in tech or getting started in designing, whatever it is you want to be in the tech field, my advice would be to start doing that thing. It might seem like it's super difficult, right? Maybe you've seen a lot of people post stuff on Twitter and say, hey, JavaScript is hard or SQL is hard, right? Those are their stories. It might not be yours, right? So don't let that stop you from going ahead to start, because you may be shocked that when you eventually start, it becomes something super easy for you. I mean, even if it's not easy, it's something that you could still work through if you do that stuff consistently. Yeah, and then the second tip would be that you should always put yourself out there. I feel like most times people feel they don't know enough, so they kind of limit themselves from like sharing knowledge online or trying to help people. But I believe that if you've been in tech for, even if it's just 1 month, there's someone who just joined tech a day ago and has just 1 day of experience as a person in tech. So the information you have and the knowledge you have as a person who has been in tech for 1 month can help that person who has experience for 1 day. So yes, you don't have a ton of information. Yes, you don't have a ton of knowledge, but the knowledge you have can be useful to someone. So my advice would be to always put yourself out there, write as many articles as you can, talk about what you're learning, share what you're building, ask questions even about things you don't understand. Like, be free and open to learn. Like, don't ever feel like you don't know enough, or don't ever feel like the fact that you don't know enough does not mean you should still share that knowledge, because when you put yourself out there, it gives you a lot more opportunities. If you're constantly writing an article about React.js, for instance, when someone bumps into an opportunity for a React job opportunity, someone can decide to reach out to you because they love the articles you're writing, and you start getting paid because you're writing those articles. It could also come off as applying for a job, and then the recruiter sees that you are knowledgeable about this subject because you've literally been teaching people how to understand this thing a lot better. So I feel like putting ourselves out there gives us, I know it can be scary, it's like uncomfortable, right? But then it gives you access to a lot more opportunities in the future. Yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah, I mean, those are both really great tips. I think the first one that you mentioned of kind of, as you said, it maybe seems like common sense or seems scary at first, but the best thing you can do is just get started somewhere and just do the thing you need to do, or take the class you need to, build the tutorial. Like, you're never gonna learn until you actually try it, and you can only like watch so many videos until you try it yourself. So I think that's a really good point. Like, you have to start somewhere, and yeah. Secondly, putting yourself out there. I talk a lot about how, other than the couple, I think, internet trolls and grumpy people here and there, I think for the most part, people, especially in the tech community,
that's true.
I know there's always a couple, but I think for the mass majority of what I've seen, like people on Twitter and blogging platforms, people are so helpful. And so, as you said, like, if you put out a tutorial article that's not complete, or if you ask a question and you're scared that people are going to judge you, that's not really the case, because people are really excited and eager to help each other out. And like, it's so cool to read threads of people brainstorming back and forth. And I think like connecting with a developer community somewhere, even if it's on Slack or Discord or something, it's such a great way to, like, as you said, make those connections, get help, get resources out there. And that's another thing. I think getting on social media, getting on blogging, that's another thing. You have to just start somewhere. Everyone starts with 0 followers. It doesn't have to be all about that. It's just, it can be scary at first, but I definitely think it's worth it. And it's such a cool way to meet people.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is.
Awesome. Well, I think we're kind of coming up on time. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come chat on the podcast. I know, I'm sure you're pretty busy, and so definitely appreciate it. I think this worked out really well with the momentum that, I've definitely been trying to post my things on Hashnode recently, and then just when I saw the option to do this hackathon with HarperDB and Hashnode, I thought, oh wow, this would be like such a cool time to get someone from the Hashnode team on. So it worked out really well. It was so interesting to hear your story. And for anyone listening, we'll put in the show notes, if you have any questions, any follow-up, or would just like to connect with either of us, you can easily do that on Twitter or other places. And if you are listening, depending on what day you're listening on, there's probably still time to enter the hackathon if you want to. Don't be afraid, but no worries. I'm sure there will be other upcoming events too that you can always get involved in. But yeah, either way, it's great to meet you and really appreciate your time. I look forward to keeping in touch and seeing all that Hashnode kind of does and succeeds in over the next year.
Sure. Thank you for having me as well. This was absolutely fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, have a great rest of your day or evening, probably closer to evening for you. And look forward.
Yeah, it's evening.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll keep in touch, and thanks again.
All right, sure. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Select Star, your resource for innovative technology and developer topics. You can find our episodes in all the usual places: Spotify, Apple, Google, RSS, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share. You can learn more about HarperDB at harperdb.io.